Recording in progress.
Okay, we will call our City Administration Committee meeting to order. Agenda review, I don't have anything to modify the agenda. I do just want to let everybody know, though, that we did receive 3.4, and so we have to make sure you're looking at the most recent version of the agenda that was posted. But other than that, I don't have any changes. I don't know if anybody else has any changes to the agenda. No? Okay. Does anyone want to move our minutes? George, seconded by Graham. All those in favor? Thank you, Denise, as usual. And then I don't see anyone from the public. So we will just get right into our voting items this evening. We have an item on consent. Does someone want to move that? Graham, seconded by Rob. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. All right, so we'll start our first one. Does someone want to move 3.1, an application for the Black Diamond Trail?
Sure, I'll take it.
Graham, thank you.
So it's authorization of a Transportation Alternative Program, TAP, application, Black Diamond Trail. Whereas the New York State Department of Transportation has noticed the availability of Federal Transportation Alternatives Program, and whereas a project to design and construct the remaining city segment of the Black Diamond Trail is eligible for funding under the TAP program and Title 23 U.S. Code as amended. And whereas completing the Black Diamond Trail in the city would connect West Hill, South Hill, and many downtown city residents to a regional trail network with destinations such as Stiganac State Park, Alan Treman State Marina, Buttermilk Falls, and other areas. The Farmers Market, waterfront development sites, and Stewart Park. And whereas this trail segment is a portion of the Black Diamond Trail as planned and approved by New York State Department of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation on September 23rd, 2009. And whereas Common Council is interested in applying for the TAP grant in order to design and construct the remaining segment of the Black Diamond Trail in the city and making connection to the town of Ithaca's Gateway Trail, now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor of the City of Ithaca is hereby authorized and directed to submit an application for funding from the New York Department of Transportation in accordance with the provisions of the TAP program in an amount not to exceed $2.75 million, and upon approval of said request to enter into and execute a project agreement with the state for such financial assistance to the City of Ithaca for design, right-of-way acquisition, construction, and construction inspection of a project as described above. And be it further resolved that, contingent upon the award of the TAP funds, the City Council hereby authorizes the establishment of capital project number 888 to pay for, in the first instance, 100% of the federal and non-federal share of the cost of all phases of the work for the project. And be it further resolved that, contingent upon award of the TAP funds, the sum not to exceed $550,000 is hereby appropriated for serial bonds and made available to cover the cost of participation in the above project in the first instance. And be it further resolved that total project costs shall not exceed $2.75 million, with with the understanding that the breakdown of funds to be approximately $2.2 million in federal transportation enhancement program funds and $550,000 in City of Ithaca serial bond financing to be administered by the Superintendent of Public Works. And be it further resolved that in the event of the full federal and non-federal share of costs of the project exceed the amount appropriated above, the City of Ithaca Common Council shall convene as soon as possible to appropriate said excesses amount immediately upon notification of the Department of Transportation thereof. And be it further resolved that the Mayor of the City of Ithaca be and is hereby authorized to execute all necessary agreements, and that the Superintendent of Public Works is hereby authorized to execute all certifications or reimbursement requests for federal aid and or multimodal program funding on behalf of the City of Ithaca with the Department of Transportation in connection with the advancement or approval of the project and providing for the administration of the project and the municipality's first instance funding of project costs and permanent funding for the local share of federal aid and all project costs that are not so eligible. And be it further resolved that a certified copy of this resolution be filed with the New York State Commissioner of Transportation by attaching it to any necessary agreement in connection with the project. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall take effect immediately, and I so move.
Thank you. Is there a second? Rob? Thank you. I think, is Erin here virtually?
I am. Hi, I'm on the Zoom. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me tonight. Sorry, it's me instead of Tim. He has taken his daughter to college, which is very exciting. But I'm actually really excited about this project, so I'm happy to speak with you all about it. I can let you know ahead of time right now that if you have any questions that I can't answer, Tim can answer them Friday in an email so that council has the answers before the meeting next week. But I can try to answer anything you have. I did want to give you one update, which is that Tim spoke with New York State Parks. Let me get that email up that he told me. He spoke with State Parks just yesterday. He's been talking to them about this trail, of course. But yesterday, they did confirm that they are willing to split the local share. So instead of us in the long run being responsible for 20% of the project cost, the city will be responsible for 10% of the project cost. And then State Parks will cover the other 10%. So they're very happy that we are taking the lead on this and contributing something, but they're happy to partner with us on it. That would mean that the total, our total cost in the end after federal reimbursement and state reimbursement would be $275,000 on this $2.75 million project. Does anybody have any particular questions? Or if not, I can maybe pull up the map that shows where the proposed trail extension is going to go.
Yeah, I guess we'll just take any questions. And I know Steve and Tim and I had a just quick over email. We don't need to adjust the resolution to say anything. We just, you know, at some point, if we get like a reimbursement from the New York State Parks, we would just move that into the appropriate account, right?
Yeah, so yeah, there is no need really to adjust the resolution as it's here tonight or goes to council next week, because basically it does everything we need it to do. It's a not to exceed number, and we would only borrow for what we need anyway as far as the full project costs for the city, and we try to do that on a cash basis. So as long as we're getting reimbursements from both the federal and state government in a timely manner, then we don't have to borrow the full amount. So yeah, it's good news, obviously, that we only have to, in the end, only have to have a 10% cost instead of the 20%. So kudos and good job to Tim for working with the parks, state parks, to get that done.
Yeah, for sure. Any questions for Erin on the project? George?
Hi, Erin.
Hi, George.
I think this is a great project. I think it's gonna be well used. Being somewhat of a tightwad, I'm wondering why it has to be 12 feet wide.
I'm pretty sure that's the width of the majority of the trail, but since it is a bi-directional trail, anything narrower than that would be potentially unsafe, especially because it's a mixed-use trail. So it is people walking and biking in both directions.
Right.
So any narrower than that, I think would be unsafe.
Gotcha. Is that bridge with a number 1 and an S or an I and an S on either side of it the most northern bridge, except for the one at the end of Cecil Malone? Is that right on the railroad track bridge?
It is not. It's going to be next to the railroad track bridge. It's going to be its own bridge.
Okay.
But it is going to be close to it. But
how do we cross the tracks?
so there is an at-grade crossing. I think right below that circle with the I and the S.
Right above the green
A
T?
little right above the green T, exactly. Right next to the green T. There is an approved at-grade crossing at that location. I guess you can walk across it right now. I haven't personally been to that spot. I think I'm going to go Monday. But for some reason, there's a already approved at-grade crossing at that location, which is great because then we don't have to file for those approvals. So that's where the crossing would be, at that little jog right above the green T.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Graham?
So thanks. This is actually probably for Steve. I mean, I'm just wondering, you said so we wouldn't issue the bonds, but right now the way it reads is we're going to be issuing $550,000 worth of bonds. So, I mean, I don't want to make work, but is there some way we can recognize this contribution from the state park system in a whereas or something?
Certainly, if you want to adjust the resolution, you can do that. I'm just saying you don't have to, because we're at the maximum amount there, so that's what I consider fine by me as far as authorization to issue bonds. And again, it's totally up to the committee. If you want to show that, that's fine as well, and we can make that adjustment, but it's not necessary in my mind, so.
So when it says up to $550,000, that doesn't mean we're going to borrow
Right.
that much.
We just borrow what
Exactly.
we need.
Right. It's whatever we're gonna need, and that's, like I said, we're doing it on a cash basis. Hopefully, we don't even have to borrow in the end even that much, so, yeah. It's, our end cost will be $275,000 as long as the project stays within that authorization footprint.
If it goes over that, will the parks, New York State Parks, still go 50%? Like, say if the costs go to 600,000, are they going to do 300,000?
Well, that would have to come back to council, because if we only authorized a certain amount of money for it in the first place, they couldn't do anything more unless
Okay.
Right.
we said you could.
You would
Alright.
have to amend the authorization, and at that point, I think you would have to go into further conversation with the state parks and
All right,
to see if they'd be willing to split the, additional costs.
okay.
I think they try to overestimate costs in as many situations as possible, and then Steve usually ends up borrowing for less than what that high-end authorized number
Yeah.
is. So if it went over 550, it would have to come back to us. And we've seen Adisu and several people here back when projects go, over the cost. So we'd have to say yay or nay if that happened.
Right.
Understood. Thank you.
Yep. Graham, and then Rob.
Do you want to go first?
No, it's fine.
Okay, so I think my point was just to kind of acknowledge that the state parks, rather than, it wasn't so much the financial thing, it's kind of like
Oh, like a thank you, like a
like a
public
thank
thing.
you. So I
Yeah,
mean,
that's fine.
if there was some way to put just a whereas we acknowledge, I don't want to wordsmith, but maybe some way of just acknowledging
Yeah.
the state park
I
contribution.
think the ink is barely dry on this
Yeah.
agreement, so.
I think it's not, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I
Yeah.
think, yes, I don't think that there is a formal agreement yet with the parks. So, the whereas would be something along the lines of, Parks has stated an intention to contribute, the 10% local match.
Steve, go ahead.
So I don't know if it's formal enough yet to, how we would put that in the resolution.
Okay.
Steve, go
Or if
ahead.
you
I'll
all typically
just
do.
leave it to staff to,
Yeah, I mean,
Make that judgment
the other
call
thing to
then.
note here is that it's all contingent on the award of this.
Right.
So that could even not happen at some point.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
this is just an
It's-
application for the money.
Exactly,
We don't have the
so-
money yet.
okay.
So yeah, it's contingent on the award, and so that's why I don't think it's really necessary.
But I certainly
Yes, but-
think it would be appropriate at council to publicly thank New York State Parks
sure.
and say, this is great, we're excited to partner on it, that kind of a thing. And, we can do something more formal if we need to down the road. Rob?
Yeah, my question was related to that, and I'll first say thanks to everyone for putting this together. I think this would be a great project, so I'm happy to see that it's going to move forward as an application. And there's my question is, do we know, maybe I missed it, but do we know when we might hear about that award? Do we
I
have any
think
sense of the timeline?
The application is due September. I don't know how soon this one usually comes back. I don't know, who knows anymore?
I honestly don't know either when we would hear back. Tim would be able to answer that for you, though.
Okay, that's fine, thanks.
He'll be back on Friday.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah, the end of September, it's due, the application's due, so it could take several months after that, before we actually hear. So it, really, from the state, you just, state and federal government, these days, you don't know exactly what the timeline is, so.
Yeah, the college just found out we got a grant today that we applied for before COVID, so that's cool.
That's good.
But it means things are starting to move again about
Yeah.
some things that people have applied for, so that's exciting. So, okay, are we ready to vote? All those in favor? And that carries 4-0. Thank you. Anyone want to move 3.2?
I'll go.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Oh, thank you, Aaron.
Thanks,
Sorry, I
Aaron.
forget you're virtually with us. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, Aaron.
It's okay.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so much.
Yep,
Talk to you all soon. Bye.
bye.
So long. 3.2, Attorney's Office, amend 2021 personnel roster. Whereas the City Attorney's Office previously contained 2 40-hour assistant city attorneys in addition to 1 20-hour assistant city attorney. And whereas one of those ACA positions was reduced to 32 hours at employee request approximately 5 years ago, and whereas that employee will soon depart city employment, and the city and the office is hiring a new employee to fill the resulting vacancy. And whereas the city attorney recommends filling this vacancy as a 40-hour position, and whereas the city attorney's office is additionally filling a new 20-hour ACA position in the office, in addition to the other long-standing 20-hour ACA position, as previously funded and authorized in the 2021 budget. And the city attorney will seek to create overlap between this new hire and the departing assistant city attorney. Now therefore be it resolved that the personnel roster of the attorney's office shall be amended as follows. Fund 1 assistant city attorney for 40 hours effective September 30th, 2021. Defund 1 assistant city attorney at 32 hours effective the same day, September 30th, 2021. And be it further resolved that such additional funds as required for this change in 2021 shall be derived from within the approved attorney's office budget. I so move.
Sorry, my thing was off. Graham seconded, thank you. Ari's here, but this seems pretty straightforward. Any questions from anyone on this? Rob?
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question. So are you adding another 20-hour position? But that doesn't seem to be recognized here.
You may recall that in the 2021 budget that council passed last fall,
It was
there was
there.
a new 20-hour position
Got it,
added
okay.
for a partial year, and it actually, the word new is a little funny, it was actually added in the fall 2019 budget process for 2020.
Yeah.
We were in our hiring process when the pandemic hit. That hiring process, of course, was therefore frozen, and we never made a hire in 2020 for that new 20-hour position, and it was then funded for part of 2021 when we came back through the
Got it.
cycle again.
All right, thank you. That's clear. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss that somewhere.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah,
already in the
funding's already
budget.
in the budget for that.
Okay,
so that's
thank
right,
you.
Yes.
Great. Any other questions? All those in favor? And that carries 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
3.3.
No, you want to? Okay, go
I
ahead.
haven't had one yet. All right, 3.3, adjustment of the managerial compensation plan, new wellness program, and updated sick leave buyout. Whereas on January 1, 2015, the City of Ithaca implemented a new management compensation plan which sought to address internal equity concerns, the city's ability to attract and retain quality talent, and compression issues that resulted from a lack of salary increases in multiple prior years. And whereas it is necessary to periodically update the management compensation plan to ensure that the compensation plan remains competitive and equitable. And whereas the Common Council authorized funding in the 2020 city budget to update the management compensation plan as recommended by the Human Resources Department effective December 31, 2020, and approved the adoption of a new management compensation plan. And whereas Common Council subsequently revoked the adoption of the December 31, 2020 management compensation plan due to the financial uncertainties created by the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas the federal stimulus payments have improved financial stability in the face of those financial uncertainties, and whereas in the face of the pandemic in 2020, the city changed health insurance options for management and confidentials to establish the Platinum Plan as the standard health insurance option for those employees. And whereas in the summer of 2021, the CSEA Administrative Unit likewise agreed to a labor contract establishing the Platinum Plan as the standard health insurance option for its membership. And in support thereof, the city agreed to provide all employees in that bargaining unit and confidentials who are enrolled in the Platinum Plan the opportunity to receive substantial financial incentives for successful participation in the Platinum Plan's wellness program. And whereas management should receive not only the burden of organization-wide shifts in the city's labor contracts, but also the benefits such as the same wellness program opportunities as under the CSEA contract, including up to $2,000 per year in wellness incentives paid directly to the employee. And whereas because confidential shifted with management in 2020 to a standard of the Platinum Plan, they should receive the benefit of the wellness incentives effective to the same July 1, 2021 date as management. And whereas the city faces an estimated $182 million in post-retirement liabilities, driven in large part by the retiree health insurance provided via sick leave buyout, which recently figured a prominent role in the downgrade of the city's bond rating, in turn increasing the city's annual borrowing costs. And whereas in the new labor contract that the CSEA admin unit recently ratified, said post-retirement liabilities resulted in a change to sick leave buyout policies, limiting that amount of sick time that can be used in retirement, i.e., for example, to cash out purchase retiree health insurance, to 75 days or of sick leave, but not as to sick leave that employees have already accrued through July 1 of 2021. And whereas, as a matter of fiscal prudence and internal equity with the other bargaining units, it is necessary that management sick leave buyout policies adjust in parallel with the CSEA admin contract. Now therefore be it resolved, and there's a bunch of these, that the current management compensation plan be amended by deleting the entry level step 1 and adding a new step 5 that produces a 20% spread effective July 1, 2021, as reflected in the spreadsheet included herewith, entitled 2021 Managerial Employee Grade Plan, effective July 1, 2021. And be it further resolved that on July 1, 2021, all managerial staff who are on step 5 of the 2019 Management Compensation Plan on June 30, 2020, shall move to step 5 of the 2021 Management Compensation Plan. And be it further resolved that on July 1, 2021, all managerial staff who were below step 5 of the 2019 Management Compensation Plan on June 30th, 2020, shall be slotted into the salary step that most closely reflects their current salary and shall continue to move one salary step annually on their respective anniversary dates in accordance with the existing procedure. And be it further resolved that the fringe benefits for management personnel policy shall be amended as included herewith, thereby implementing a wellness incentive and sick leave buyout limitations in the same manner as reflected in the new CSEA admin contract. And be it further resolved that in keeping with the July 1, 2021 effective date of other portions of this resolution, and in light of the inability to administer wellness testing in the short remainder of 2021, all management employees who were enrolled in the Platinum Plan as of July 1, 2021 shall receive applicable wellness amounts in 2021 prorated at 50% value without any need to satisfy wellness targets in 2021. For example, $1,000 for family plan participants and $375 for individual plan participants. But in succeeding full years at 100% value, subject to achieving applicable targets as provided in the fringe benefits for managerial personnel policy and associated implementation of the wellness program. And be it further resolved that in keeping with the July 1, 2021 effective date of other portions of this resolution, in light of the unique circumstance created by the pandemic that resulted in confidential employees shifting to the Platinum Plan as their standard health insurance much earlier than did the CSEA admin contract, and further due to the inability to administer wellness testing in the short remainder of 2021, all confidential employees who were enrolled in the Platinum Plan as of July 1, 2021 shall, in lieu of the 2021 wellness program benefits provided by the CSEA admin contract, receive applicable wellness amounts in 2021 prorated at 50% value without any need to satisfy wellness targets in 2021. Same examples, but in succeeding years at 100% value, achieving applicable targets and provided the CSA admin contract, which confidential compensation and benefits is standardly tracked. And I so move.
Is there a second? Graham, thank you. I see Shelley, who probably can explain this a little bit. We did have a brief, we've already talked about this a little bit when we went through some of the elements that had changed for CSEA, so I don't know if Shelley wants to say anything in additional, or?
So, I mean, this is a four-pronged resolution. There are four areas that it addresses. The compensation plan, the managerial compensation plan is the same plan that you approved prior to COVID. It was supposed to go into effect December 31st, which you all that's all in there. Then establishing the wellness incentive program for management, which I don't know if you have questions about that, but that's just, it's a system where employees can voluntarily participate in basically an evaluation of certain criteria. And if they meet those criteria, they would be eligible for the incentive. And even if they don't meet them, but they're following through with a certain procedure or just education, or trying to work on meeting with a coach and trying to work on improving their statistics, they can still be eligible for the program. And that's the case with everyone, with CSEA and the admin unit folks. And then the application of adopting the CSEA sick leave buyout, applying that to management, which is the piece about the 75-day cap. And of course, anyone who was above that cap on July 1st, that would be their cap. So, not to take anything away from anyone who's already earned the sick leave. And then last was making a modification because the confidentials are indexed to the CSEA admin unit. So in their contract, their program goes into effect in the fall. But we thought in terms of being fair, because the confidentials have been on the platinum plan long before this, that the same as management in terms of time frame, that we would, that the benefits should be offered to them, the same benefits should be offered to them in terms of the wellness incentive for 2021. So I don't know that.
George?
So if I'm understanding this correctly, the wellness incentive for CSEA doesn't go into effect until September?
Well, in terms of the cash value that they would get, yes. In terms of the amount of money that we negotiated, it's prorated based upon that time frame, September. So all we're saying is that the confidentials should be prorated the same as management, which would be July 1, in terms of the incentive that they receive. This year, because we're in the middle of the year, no one has to meet any of the criteria for the wellness program. The wellness incentive is sort of a bonus for this year.
So does CSEA get that as well?
Yes, they get it, but it's prorated based upon September 1. We're just, all this is saying is that for confidentials, we're prorated
Right.
theirs based upon July 1.
Because you were required to take this new insurance a year ago.
Yes, you
Okay.
got it.
Yep, thanks.
Any other questions? Graham?
I might regret asking this, but so the wellness targets, who sets those? I mean, are these kind of established individually, or so how does that work? If you just briefly can kind of
Yeah,
inform me on
it'll
that.
be brief, because I don't, I mean, I don't know the exact who, other than that it's their health, their standard health indicators. So like blood pressure, what's the normal blood pressure? 120/80, I think. So anyone, who's above that, they would not meet the target, but they could still work toward improving their health. So those standards are set by, I don't know who.
Yeah, the city doesn't set them. It's like
Yeah, no,
an
we don't.
insurance actuator
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
writes them out for insurance companies.
Science people, medical people.
Right, because it's part of a program that's administered by Excelis, I think through an Excelis vendor, but it's not the city's program
Yeah,
per se.
no, it's not the
Excelis
same. I mean, the
program.
city we have absolutely nothing to do with it other than providing a facility. The only information we get is whether or not a person is eligible for the incentive. We just get numbers. I mean, not their numbers, but that they're eligible.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor? And that carries 4-0. 3.4, I just realized you have to look at the version that Donna emailed around. That's the one that has 3.4 in it. So if no one has it, I have it right here. You have it, Graham?
Yeah, I just was getting through my email, so I've got that.
You
yeah.
got it?
So, yeah.
Okay.
I don't have it yet.
If you,
I'll
Donna
read it.
sent,
I'll read it slowly. Okay, this is 3.4,
can forward it, yeah.
authorization to amend dependent care flexible spending account plans. Excuse me. Whereas the City of Ithaca sponsors a dependent care flexible spending account plan in which employees of the city may elect to participate on terms as set forth in the plans and governing laws and regulations. And whereas Section 214 of the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021 allows amendments to be made to the dependent care flexible spending plan to make their use more beneficial to employees and dependents impacted by COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas the city desires to continue to allow employees to avail themselves of the relief of the CAA Section 214, and whereas an additional amendment of the terms of the city's spending plan, flexible spending plan terms, is necessary to accomplish the foregoing, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Ithaca's flexible spending plan are amended effective immediately to allow employees eligible to participate in the flexible spending plan who have not made two changes in their plan elections during 2021, including elections to participate, increase or decrease contributions, or to cease to participate without regard to whether a qualified status change has occurred, may elect to increase their dependent care limit up to $10,500 for a household filing jointly, or $5,200 for a household filing separately for 2021 expenses. And be it further resolved that the city's mayor, director of human resources, and controller shall take such actions as they deem necessary or desirable to document and communicate, or to cause the administrator of the city's flexible spending plan to document and communicate these plan amendments to employees eligible for participation in the plan, and to implement the foregoing amendment and make the amended plan features available to employees as promptly as practical. And I so move.
Is there a second? Rob, thank you. You want to walk through this one with us too, Shelley?
Okay. There are a couple of edits.
Oh, that's
this
right. You
time-
had said, yeah. Let's walk through those, and then I think they're small enough we can consider them friendly.
Okay,
So.
there's one other one, I apologize.
That's okay.
So, on the first line, there's an extra S on the plan, it should be plan, not plans, so that's minor.
On which one? The first?
At the top, authorization to amend dependent care flexible spending
Plan.
account plan.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Also, the second whereas, the first line, actually going to, recommending to delete that and instead put whereas recent federal legislation in its place. And there's a little complicated thing behind it because they keep changing the names. and
So strike that first line
Yeah.
and replace it with that.
Recent federal
okay.
legislation.
Are we considering that friendly? Okay, that's
Okay,
fine.
thank you. And then on the first resolved, it says effective immediately. Change that to effective January 1, 2021.
So you can prorate it backwards.
And that way, people will be able to use, for previous childcare.
Okay.
and
Is
then
that friendly?
I think so. Yep.
Okay.
And then last is more of a clarification. In the first resolve, the last sentence,
It's all one sentence.
okay, the end of the sentence, the last full line
The last
of the
phrase.
sentence where it says up to $10,500 for a household filing jointly, comma, and for single head of household, comma.
Okay.
And that just clarifies, because it could be one person, but they're the single head of household, they're still eligible for the 10-5.
Okay. Yeah, that's how I would read that.
Yeah.
As it was.
Friendly?
Yep, I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you can work with Denise and Steve to make sure those
Yes,
get
yes.
edited. Steve has a question.
Yeah, I did notice one other, the 5,200 for filing separately is actually 5,250, so.
Well, okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I wonder, that's what we,
Yeah, I
That's-
just looked it up because I was.
okay, thank you,
So, yeah,
Steve.
yeah, so that,
That makes more sense.
I don't know, is there a maximum number of friendlies that we, Ari,
Before they
are we
become
violating some sort of rule of Robert?
You've used up your friendship.
That's it, you only get 5 friends, no more, okay.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine, I know that these Federal funds have been complicated for everyone to navigate, so.
The stars just didn't align this
No.
time.
Are there any questions about the program itself or the resolution itself? George?
I guess I just don't understand this language. Is, first of all, is the limitation of change, what is a change? Does that mean I want help with one child, but now I'm gonna want help with 2 children?
So currently, George, the maximum that you can withdraw from your paycheck in order to go into a flexible spending account for dependent care is $5,000, right? It's $5,000,
Right, non-taxable.
non-taxable.
Yep.
Oh, so the employee pays for the child care,
Yes,
but it's non-taxable?
correct,
It's an FSA.
All right.
correct. And so they're just raising that limit during COVID. It's just one of the options that's allowed.
Okay, so why would somebody make more than 2 changes in a year?
Well, we amended the plan back in, I think, January or February, where we allowed them to make up to 2 changes. Normally, that's not the case. You can only make a change if there's a qualifying event. So when they passed which act is this? The Consolidated Appropriations Act, they provided for individual, because people's situation was so crazy with COVID, they had elected to take out all this money for childcare, but then everybody was home, so they didn't. So it gave people an opportunity to make those adjustments and up to 2 of them. So you all passed a resolution that allowed it allowed staff to make those changes up to twice a year. Because things were continuing to change, the childcare situations. They didn't know if they were going back to school or if daycare was gonna be
Right.
open so,
Are these numbers per child?
no,
Household.
it's household.
Okay, all right.
And so just to clarify, Shelley, normally there is a window of time where every person has an opportunity to change benefits, right? So what you're saying with these changes is you just allowed people to make changes to benefits because the pandemic was causing so much chaos for people that
Yes,
they could make adjustments to their benefits
Right.
outside of that normal window of time
Exactly.
that's allotted. Okay.
but we only allowed them to be able to do it twice. So
Okay.
if anyone has already done it twice, which I don't think we have anyone, but if they had, they would not be eligible to do it.
Okay. And when is the normal window that people change their benefits? It's November? Is
Yeah,
that-
October,
okay.
yeah,
Okay,
October, November.
great. Any other questions on this? Graham?
Just briefly, so remind me, what was the previous amount for the first figure? Now?
5,000.
5,000, okay. And so this is only in effect till the end of 2021, and then
Yes.
the rules will go back, or they might be changed, I guess.
Then it'll go back to 5,000.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, okay, thank you.
and hopefully there'll be no reason to change it.
Donna?
So I didn't.
Can you turn the microphone on?
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah, of course. I'm just chatting, so. Yeah, I haven't thought about daycare in a long time. So, are people allowed to carry forward more than they used to because of these weird things that happened in 2020?
That's a very good question. One of the amendments we made was to allow people to carry, that they could carry forward into 2022. The issue with dependent care is that this is only for 2021. So if they were to carry, bizarre, $10,000 over, there would be tax implications to that, because in 2022, as of now, you are only eligible for 5,000. So those who do it they should consult their accountant, but they should set it up so that they expend the amount this year and don't run into any issues next year, or ensure that next year they're not above the 5,000.
Or find a fancy, expensive childcare for the rest of the year.
Honestly, it's not hard. I don't know how fancy, but it's definitely
It's definitely expensive. That is correct. All right. Anything else on this? Thank you for walking us through that. I know these things have been very complicated. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? And that carries 4-0. Thank you. Okay, I believe we have exhausted our voting items this evening. I think we do have just a discussion and update on our ongoing work of the task force that's been working on city manager legislation. So I think we wanted to do a few things this evening. We wanted to quickly have Ari, I think, walk everybody through one more time this draft of this legislation. We wanted to see if people have questions, feedback, or if there is still information that is missing that people might need. And then we have kind of a few questions we've compiled that we want to ask the group as well. So Ari, why don't we start with you, if you just want to sort of walk us through what we have here in the packet, the draft legislation, and maybe just hit the highlights of some of the changes.
Sure, yeah. I'll keep it brief, but you have in the agenda packet both a local law and an ordinance. They cover a whole wide variety of provisions of the city charter and city code. All of the charter changes are addressed in the local law. Many, but not all of the code changes necessary are addressed in the ordinance, but some of the code changes actually had to be in the local law anyway due to legislative equivalence issues. And in short, of course, the substance of what we're talking about here is, which others can speak on tonight as well, is to create a city manager position in a council manager form of government. This would still maintain the mayor's position as a member, as the presiding member of the Common Council, but would make the management of the executive branch of government the responsibility of the city manager. And as a result, there are lots of instances of the mayor's responsibilities identified throughout the charter and code that are being switched if this passes to the manager role. Shall I make a few procedural comments about how this will move forward, Deb, or did you want to do that?
Sure, no, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So procedurally speaking, this is, as you know, for discussion only tonight. If committee wants to move in this direction, it could be a voting item at next month's CA meeting, and will still be eligible under local law requirements for amendment at next month's CA meeting. After which, if committee wanted to vote it on to council, it could be sent on to the October council agenda. And then as a reminder, of course, this would be subject to referendum at the November 2022 general election. As drafted would take effect on January 1st of 2024, nearly 2.5 years from now. So that is, which of course aligns with the end of the mayor's current term as well. So there are probably some basic highlights. Did you want me to touch on anything else particular,
that's
Deb?
fine. There's a stranger lurking in the back that might want to say something. Hi.
I just watched it upstairs.
Oh,
Get a closer look.
you can sit.
I'm okay.
Okay.
I have nothing to add.
Okay. Yeah, I think the other reason for the 2024 was to give, I think what you've heard in our presentation is that we know that this is substantive change for the city, so that if it passed referendum, then clearly they would need time in order to figure out what the transition would look like. If there was then an inclination to change the staffing structure of the mayor's office and the city manager office, then there would be ample opportunity to work that through the budget process and figure out what staffing was needed in order to support the change. So we're thinking about this in terms of a phased transition, so it wasn't like an abrupt change in how things are done, and then it would be cleaner if it were to end with the current mayor's term, ending term. So I think we just wanted to first ask if anyone had any questions or needed any additional clarification, and then we had a few things we wanted to talk about, and then I think we can kind of move on to next steps after that. So first, questions, comments, feedback, things on your brain about this. George?
I haven't found it yet. But I read it earlier, and somewhere in here it says the mayor will appoint all members of boards and committees. And I would like to see language that has council participating in those choices.
Okay.
What do you mean by I have a question.
Go ahead, Donna.
George, by participate, do you mean to also appoint people, or to give the mayor names, or to vote on the mayor's appointments as we do now?
Good question. I would say more involvement in selection.
Okay.
Of
I don't know
candidates.
that we need that in, I don't know that we need that in the legislation. I think we can take a look at that either in council rules of procedure or any number of other ways. But I don't think that needs to be, I think one of the things we tried to do when we looked at this, and Donna did most of this work, Donna and Ari, honestly, tried to start pulling out things that really didn't belong in legislative language, right? Things that were more operationalized. So that to me is something that is an internal operation that we can absolutely make that suggestion, and we do actually vote right now, but
I know
what
we
you're saying is
Involvement in the selection
involvement in the
of
selection. Okay.
board members.
That is a conversation we can have, but I don't know that needs to be in the legislation, but I've written it down as an item
Okay.
to review. What else? Hi, Cynthia. Was that it?
That was it for me.
Okay. Graham?
So this is an observation. So Ari said most of the executive kind of responsibilities are switched. And I see, a lot of this is crossed out mayor, city manager, crossed out mayor, city manager. So I don't know. I mean, at some point in this process, I think it's going to be important to summarize this, not in legislation, but in, columns. The mayor used to do this, the city manager does this. Because I think what's not coming out from this is what's the role of the mayor, and this does involve some changes to that as well. And looking through this, it's very difficult to see that. And that's what people, I think, are going to be asking. Is
No, that's
We've
good.
got that.
Right.
Yeah.
Rob and I are tasked with writing a supporting memo that will go with this when it's a voting item next month. So that's really helpful feedback for tonight, is what kinds of things do you need in the summary memo? So that's a good one. So just sort of an easier way that summarizes what has changed.
Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. What else? Anything else? I don't know if Donna or Shelley or Ari, we did also have a good conversation with senior staff about this. Seemed just widely supportive of moving in this direction. A couple of suggestions on how we, run the public information campaign and assisting us with some of the language. And we had a good conversation about the importance of nonpartisanship on the part of city manager. It was a good conversation, but mostly supportive. And thank you, Mayor, for letting us take over that meeting. Yes, Donna.
I want to add that I've talked to the mayors of 6 other cities in New York State that have this form of government, and they rave about it. they said that they can't imagine working in another form. So that was really, enlightening. And Dan and I talked with former Mayor Alan Cohen, and I also talked with former Mayor Carolyn Peterson to get a little bit of sense of their experiences, and they also said, sounds like a great idea. I've talked privately to several department heads, and to see what kind of questions they have. So I think people are understanding this, and so far are quite supportive.
Great. The committee itself has some sort of questions we wanted to ask this group and get some feedback on to fine tune. Are we ready? Are you okay if I did that now? Or Cynthia, did you have anything you wanted to ask?
I apologize for missing the beginning. I was trying to get here as quickly as possible. So is now a proper time to ask about specifics in terms of responsibilities delegated to either the manager or the mayor, or is that later on in the process?
No, I think you can let us know now. We're trying to collect. Basically, the point of this, just having this on for discussion, is what do council members need additional clarification on before we might be ready to bring it to a vote next month. So it sounds like now is exactly the time to ask that question.
So I appreciate the summary that's going to be put forward that details the differences in the roles and responsibilities. I noticed the removal that officers appointed pursuant for a city court judge has been removed. Is that somewhere else in the legislation in terms of who appoints a city court judge?
Ari can probably answer that.
This is on page 3, section 2, item AC3.
Right, that's a great question, Cynthia. I don't want to hold up the meeting, so let me look that up and try to give you an answer.
And it's fine if we just collect your questions and, I mean, today, I think this is what we want. What isn't still clear? What do you have questions on? Where did we maybe not make the right change? So I will just start a laundry list, and if we can't answer it now, we will get the answer.
And sorry, one partial answer, which I apologize is only partial, that I should give now, is that you may recall that the city court judge used to be an appointed office in the city and has transitioned to being entirely elected, with the exception of vacancies.
Right.
Where a judge resigns prior to the expiration of their term. And that varies from city to city across the state. So I think that speaks to quite a bit of your question, but your question still, I think, appropriately asks what happens to those vacancies.
Sure, given recent history, obviously, this
Yep.
is something that is exercised, so that would be good to
Oh,
have
and sorry,
that
you know what, and
articulated.
actually, I do have a little bit more of an answer for you, which is, I'm sorry, this is taking a moment to come into focus in my brain on that
I
topic.
appreciate it.
There's a few hundred different issues, as you know, in this legislation. So, but yeah, what just came into focus for me is state law actually provides the vacancy, the process for each city to fill vacancies on city court, and it provides a different process for different sets of cities across the state, just to drive us all crazy. It's actually tailored to basically to the requests that those cities made of the state at various points as they were being set. So Ithaca has a process that's already prescribed there, and whatever it is we write into our charter and code or not, the only legal process for filling a vacancy on city court will be the one that's provided in state law. So we'll obviously want to make sure that those match. I believe by deleting this, they will align, but that's what I will double check. So thank you for flagging it.
And that might be a question that would come up, so if there's a reference that we could include to answer that question, that would be helpful.
Sure.
One of the, as we think about the difference between, as it's articulated, the mayor being the political leader and the city manager being the administrative leader, city manager knowing the ins and outs of city operations and so on, I wonder if we might have a discussion with regards to who then is the appropriate person that gives the state of the city address. Is it the manager or is it the mayor? Because then is that a reflection of, I mean, oftentimes that State of the City address reflects the priority of the mayor, who in the previous role might have the authority to unilaterally put forward a direction, but I'm not getting the sense, or at least it seems to me, under this new system, it really is council itself that sets that direction, and so then who is the appropriate person to give the state of the city? Because any new vision that would come forward presumably would be the vision of council directly. So that might be something we might want to think about a little bit in terms of, again, what is a political leader? What is that role? How does it differentiate between council as a body, the mayor as an individual, and looking at the city from a management perspective? So that's an interesting idea that I had. And then just the last thing, just administratively, thinking about, in some places, there's one that jumps out at me now, but there might be another. If there's, I feel like it would be, okay, I'll just mention the one I'm looking at. This is on page 7. And it talks about the duty of council members. If you identify something that is inappropriate or illegal that's occurring, according to this, that council member should report to the city manager and the mayor. And maybe I'm thinking that might be an or, because I think one would tend to think that by reporting directly to a senior officer of the city, that it serves as notice that you're aware of something going on, and it should satisfy that. But if there are other areas that there is an and, maybe looking or highlighting if there might be some benefit to changing that structure a little bit. Just thinking about whatever myriad of possibilities that might be encountered.
Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting. The on that last one, the one thought that comes to my mind is if I had to pick only one out of the two, of the city manager and the mayor, who would be notified of illegal activity, I'd want to make sure it went to the city manager, because they're in charge of running that, the entire executive branch organization that probably employs the people who might be implicated there. So by saying or, I worry it might not make it to the city manager, which makes me think that we should either stick with and or say, nope, it just goes to the city manager and that's it. What I liked about going to the mayor as well was that helps directly loop in the common council.
Mm-hmm.
But happy to explore.
Okay, thanks. All right, so we had a couple questions just from, things we were still sort of ruminating on the group. Right now, the way I think we have it written is changing all the department heads through to be appointed by city manager. But then I think there were some questions just from conversation we had is, do we think that some you would want to keep at will that the mayor would appoint, or were we comfortable with the city manager? But I think the big example was the city attorney. Yeah, so right now the at will are city attorney, the executive assistant in the mayor's office, and right now chief of staff. But I guess we're assuming chief of staff position would move away and this would be it. So that was just a question, and I don't know if anyone had any thoughts on that, but that was one comment that came through. George?
Thanks for mentioning that, because I just want to understand clearly that if we have a city manager, the chief of staff position probably won't be around anymore.
That's correct. Yep. And then another question, I think, Donna, you and I were talking about this earlier. I can't even read my own handwriting here. How much right now in the charter, there's a lot of language about council approving the appointment of department heads. And did we need that to be changed? Is that what your question was? Or did we want to keep that process where if it's just the city manager hires and fires, then do we need council to approve?
Right, but I think my question in addition was that in the draft that we have right now, we've got the city attorney being appointed by the city manager, and it doesn't mention approval by council. But
Oh,
the
I
other
see.
department heads are approved by council, so I was wondering
Okay.
why we were inconsistent in that way. And I think Ari said he had an answer for us. I'm sorry, Ari.
That's good. Poor Ari.
Yeah, I know.
No, that's fine. So actually, there's two elements there. The one that I knew you were asking about where the city attorney is concerned was at whose pleasure, so to speak, does the city attorney serve? And then the related element that I've only maybe just picked up on now is you're asking whether they should be confirmed by common council or not. So to the first piece, as you know, currently the city attorney is appointed, this is obviously a personal topic to me, I guess, but I'm not trying to view it personally. The city attorney is appointed by the mayor and serves at the pleasure of the mayor. And I think one question that I understood you to be asking, Donna, is should the city attorney instead be treated under the new charter, if we move in this direction, like any other department head? To
Right.
which my answer is, I mean, obviously it's a policy choice that the Common Council needs to make around this legislation right now. My at least tentative recommendation would be that I believe it's probably smarter not to make the city attorney like a department head, because department heads have a great deal of job security, to be blunt. And I'm not sure that it's the healthiest choice for the city to have a city attorney who has such a longevity of job security. The city attorney can have a lot of influence on a lot of different outcomes, and I think it's important that the city attorney remains accountable in the long run to the Common Council, and I would recommend doing that through the city manager, who in turn is accountable to the Common Council. Whereas if you make the city attorney a straight-up department head with the job security of a department head, that's a very hard position to remove. You could imagine a city attorney being there for a few decades at a time. And I believe that that would be a less optimal outcome for the city, although I could also imagine a city attorney doing a great job for a few decades. It just wouldn't give Common Council the same control that I believe they should have ultimately over that position. Does that speak to that first question well?
It does. Oh, I'm sorry, Donna, go ahead.
I think so. Let me clarify. So you think that the city attorney should be appointed by the city manager, which is what we've written, but be different from other department heads in what sense?
That they serve at the pleasure of the city manager. So other department heads don't serve at the pleasure of the mayor currently, or of the Common Council. They can only be removed for cause,
Okay.
which is a huge distinction from the city attorney or the chief of staff or the assistant to the mayor currently, who
Okay.
Can never outstay their welcome, so to speak.
But what you just said is what you think. That is not how we wrote this draft legislation, right? We would have to change what you wrote in order to make it the way that you just suggested. Is that correct? No?
I don't
It is this way?
believe so.
Okay. Because I know we went back and forth about city attorney being a regular department head or not. So if the way you have it written is how you just described it should be, then I don't think we need to, then I think it's okay the way that it is.
Yep, I will double check that right now, but my recollection is that we wrote it the way I just said.
Okay.
Regardless, it would be very useful to have the committee's views on what it is you would like to
True.
happen there.
Right.
That's why I had it on this list as something that we still were kind of going back and forth on. So,
Yeah, so sorry, what we have written right now says that the city attorney is an officer who serves at the pleasure of the city manager in accordance with and subject, yeah. So, yeah, it is what I just said. It's that they serve at the pleasure of the city manager, meaning that they could be terminated not for cause. And I think the second question that maybe I heard you ask a moment ago, Donna, that I wasn't aware of until this conversation on committee floor here now, is whether that should also be subject to council approval. Yeah. And that, I guess I did not speak to just now. I'm not sure I have as refined a view on that. I think my suggestion would be that the city attorney's removal again, which can be without cause, if it's at the pleasure of, should not require council approval, that it would be enough that the city manager says this isn't working. Whether the city attorney's appointment should be subject to council approval, actually, I don't have a very strong view on one way or another.
Graham, I saw your hand.
So currently, the city attorney's position is approved by council or is not? I can't.
Is
No,
not.
it's
Right, okay, that's
entirely
fine.
at will. The mayor can
Yep.
determine
Right.
when whatever attorney they want comes and goes.
Which is to say that, in short, the legislation in front of you right now maintains the status quo with respect to the city attorney, simply substituting in the city manager for the mayor.
Okay. Haven't quite formed an opinion of that yet.
It's okay.
Let me come back to
These
it.
are why we're kind of tossing these notions out there, because if we want to come to a final language on this, we didn't want to try to do that all in one meeting where we're also trying to vote on it. So it's completely fine if you want to think on a lot of these things that we talk about tonight. Cynthia? Oh, Graham, were you done?
I'm beginning to form thought. I mean, one of my thoughts there is, we rely on, talking about council, relies on the city attorney to a huge extent. Not that we don't rely on all department heads, but when it comes to executive sessions and stuff like that. So I definitely see the rationale for treating this position differently than a department head. And with that, I also think it would be good for council, in addition to the manager, to have some kind of say in the removal. So I don't want this person serving at the pleasure of everybody, but some way of having council weigh in on that decision, I think, would be helpful.
Yeah, I guess we don't have it now. So I don't know what it would look like if we added some level in, other than putting some sort of prescribed search committee compilation or something like that. But I don't know that we want to put that into the legislation.
I think there are a couple possible versions. I'm not sure I'm in favor of them, but then it's not up to me in the end. One would be, as Deb just said, requiring council input prior to dismissing the city attorney, prior to the city manager dismissing the city attorney. The other would actually be to require council action, that in order to dismiss the city attorney, the city manager, have a process where the city manager is supposed to, for example, give notice to the common council that the city manager is looking to dismiss the city attorney, and then either go through a formal process of gathering input or actually require a council vote. I'm not sure that I believe that latter option of requiring a council vote to dismiss the city attorney is a positive move. I think it might be better to leave that authority with the city manager in the end. And of course, the city manager is accountable to the common council anyway, and the common council can in fact dismiss the city manager if they want to.
That's true. So the city
yeah.
manager gets rid of the attorney and council doesn't
Then
like
who's
it,
gonna-
then
who's gonna
council
run
gets
the
rid of the
city?
city manager, and then that's it.
But actually, I wasn't trying, I guess I added some levity here, but that wasn't really my goal. I guess more specifically, what I'm trying to say is, if a city manager who has to run the entire city government feels that they're working poorly enough with the city attorney that they want to dismiss the city attorney, it would strike me as reasonably problematic to give the common council a veto over that while still retaining the same city manager. To me, it would either be the common council would need to say, you know what, if you can't work with the city attorney, then you can't do it at all, city manager, you're out of here. Or let the city manager replace the city attorney, because they're going to need to work well enough together that if they're looking to dismiss them, it's probably not the right arrangement for continuing to run a city government. Would be my baseline view of that.
Cynthia and then George.
Donna had a question too.
Oh, I'm sorry, Danica.
Yeah, I support the perspective that Ari had brought forward. Part of the rationale of this is to, under a city management system, to have the longevity of service in administering this complex organization. And by having the city attorney be at will to the city manager, you can definitely make sure that you're not going to end up in a situation where you might be at odds with the political leader who might take a different view, and an attorney that might cycle in and out depending on how the election might change from year to year. I think it makes a lot of sense that the attorney have that ability and commitment to work hand in hand with the city manager and not give the opening for any type of conflict of who actually is in charge, whether or not it's the mayor or the city manager. So it makes a lot of sense to me that the city attorney be at will to the manager.
And maybe I'll just briefly add, however, I don't really see any problem with the city manager being required to give notice to council of the, I mean, bring council into the loop, explain what the problem is and why you're headed in this direction, even if they have the right to do it. That makes a lot of sense, so.
Yeah, I do think that makes sense, is to put some sort of like mandatory notification of council if it's gonna happen. It doesn't mean council can overrule, but at least they'll be informed of the decision. Okay. I don't know who was first over here, George or Donna? George?
Go ahead.
I was just wanted to add that that in my conversations with these 6 mayors across the state, several of them emphasized, and other people I've talked to emphasized, and it makes total sense. You still need good people, and you still need to have a level of trust and communication among all your people. And we want to put good structures in place, but there's going to be crises, and there's going to be odd things happening now and then. So we might not be able to write the rule for every situation. We want to cover a lot of cases. So regarding what we were just talking about, I'm not sure. I think it's fine. I think it's good that the city attorney would be at the hired and fired at the will of the city manager. But I think it would be really bizarre if a city manager fired a city attorney without telling us first in executive session. I mean, that would be a red flag that there's something wrong with the city manager who can't bring us into the loop on something like that. So what my point is that there's some things that we might not be able to write a rule for, but our sense would be that a good person with good communication skills who works in a respectful manner wouldn't have this problem.
Right. Okay. George?
Yeah, like many of my colleagues, my views aren't concrete. But
Okay.
if there's theoretically a feud between a city manager and a city attorney, and it could very well be that the city attorney is highly respected by council, and we don't want to lose that person. I'm thinking right now there should be a council yay or nay about firing the city attorney. I agree that it should be at will, not like other department heads. That's what I'm thinking right now.
I guess at will, it's harder to be at will to a body instead of an individual, right? So if you're saying council should have a say, then it's at will. I mean, I think that the point Cynthia brought up was you want the city manager and the city attorney to be able to be aligned and working as a team. And if the elected officials change over or change political party or affiliation or whatever, then the alignment should be between the stability of the people in those positions. Is that kind of what you were saying? Yes. But I hear what you're saying too. So I think I mean, this is why we're having this discussion. These are the critical conversations we need to decide, and it's perfectly fine for you to make a suggestion to amend something or change something, or if I think we all need to think about a lot of elements of this before we're ready to put together what we think the final version is. So I think I don't expect everyone to have the concrete, like, I know it should be this way. Rob, were you done, George?
I'm done.
Rob?
Yeah, I'm just, I think it's a good conversation, but I'm wondering, either in conversations with other cities or in our research around best practices, do we know how other municipalities have managed this particular?
We can go back and look at that. Okay. And then one other thing we talked about was wanting to somehow, I don't think this is in here yet, but we wanted some feedback from everyone on it and then some suggestions from Ari as to how to incorporate it. We think one of the, age-old questions has been, is the mayor a part-time job or a full-time job? Like, what is it, right? So how do we somehow very definitively codify what we expect of the mayor and the role of the mayor? So I don't know if people have opinions on that and they want to give guidance on that. Do you feel that is something that should be written in? If so, what are your thoughts on full-time, part-time? What does that look like for you? Or maybe you don't care and that's just something I... Graham?
Well, I don't regard, and I could be wrong, but I don't regard council as a full-time job. I mean, I think we put in various levels and certainly varies during the year. And so for me, I think if the mayor's position is more of a, it's called senior council level position, my thinking is unless I see some list of this is what the mayor's got to do, it probably more than council but less than a full-time job is what I'm at least seeing here.
Okay.
And so, but I could be wrong based on if I'm missing things here. It's obviously an important position and kind of, as I said, like senior council, but I'm not sure I see it as a full-time position. If the city manager is going to have the responsibilities and the tasks and authority that I'm seeing in this. So that's my immediate thought on that.
Okay. So you're leaning towards part-time something. Okay. And then we have been tossing around the term like chief elected official, like to describe, I think what we've been trying to think about is the city manager is the internal operations, the person that makes sure internally everything is running well, and that the mayor is still sort of that external face, public representative, more policy direction than like internal daily operations. So I don't think we're diminishing the responsibilities of the mayor so that it's really close to a council member. I do, once we get that chart, I think that'll help people to understand, like, what are we still saddling the mayor's role with versus manager. That might help people answer this question. George?
Yeah, I agree with Graham. We're taking a lot of weight off of the mayor's back by having a city manager. So I think it's a part-time job.
Okay.
With the knowledge that, like in the county ledge, the chair of the county ledge gets a bigger stipend than everybody else.
Okay.
Double.
Okay. Cynthia?
I don't know, my thoughts on this have sort of run the gamut. I think a lot of us on council, we put in different levels of participation based on the number of committees we volunteer for and so on. It could definitely eat up a significant amount of time. I also recognize that if the expectation of the mayor is to attend conferences that other mayors attend across the state or in the United States, to be present at ribbon cuttings at all hours of the day, attend annual meetings as the face of the council, it's got to be really challenging for that individual to find other work to fill out the level of income that they would need if this were a part-time position. That, unlike other part-time positions, does not have okay, you're only working 20 hours a week, that means you're working 3 days a week, and then the other days we're not calling on you, you're not going to do anything. So in terms of practicality, how feasible is it for that person to be able to fill out their income and make a full-time and be able to live off of it? And especially if you're looking at like a two-time council level of income, that's poverty level right there. So, so I do think that we should be realistic of what the expectations are, and if the expectations are truly a part-time position, then there should be hours, you know, so that that person can make their way and find another source. So I think that that is something that needs to be fleshed out, especially not only in terms of their expectations for the position, but also expectations to the constituents who will need to recognize that that person is not going to be
Right.
accessible any time of the day or night as you want them to answer your phone or email and so on. So
Maybe full-time, part-time is not the right term. Maybe it's just very clearly laying out expectations of what the mayor is responsible for and not. I think that would be helpful too. Because it will be hard to quantify in hours, I think. If we say this is, and we've struggled with this for I don't know how long. I know Shelley has done an analysis of the way the current role is written. What would the compensation be for someone that has a job description that currently has the mayor? Maybe it would be helpful for us to get some sort of a basic idea of, once we have this very clearly articulated, the expectations of the mayor, we could try to see if there was anything it would map to in terms of the salary compensation based on those tasks assigned. Maybe that would be a better way for us to look at this instead of trying to define it full-time, part-time. Maybe Shelley and I can work on that. Great.
And again, you know, if it's just keeping in mind, you know, what does it take for a person to live a balanced, stable life and be able to provide for themselves and their future, you know, and making sure we have a reasonable expectation as we move forward with that.
Right. I think we're starting to draft what a city manager job description would look like. Maybe we just need a mayor's job description or something, you know, something like that that might help us get down into this a little more. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. What else? Those are all the things that I had on my list to toss out to this group. What else? Nothing? Okay. Just want to thank the group that's been working on this. I mean, a lot of you have been doing a lot of heavy lifting. I know, Donna, you've done a ton of work, and Dan is still volunteering from the sidelines to help us do some things as well, and there's been a lot going on. So I think it's exciting to see this kind of coming to the close. We've been working on this topic for quite a while. So, okay, I don't think we have anything else. Does anyone have anything we need to talk about for next month? Remember that next month is the Committee of the Whole, the public hearing and the Committee of the Whole for 5G as the first hour or so. So Steve and I are going to try to work on keeping the actual CA agenda as small as possible, because we'll do the CA meeting after we focus on the Committee of Whole. So I think that's it. Anybody have anything else? Anyone want to move to adjourn?
So I have one question.
Sure.
So, am I correct in understanding that when it comes to the 5G, that the CA committee will vote on a recommendation to council?
Yes.
Okay.
Though when we say the CA committee, we actually mean the committee of the
It's
whole
committee
of
of the
all
whole.
common council.
So
It actually
It
won't
will-
be CA.
it will be all 10 of us will participate in the final drafting of the guidelines.
And then when will it be voted on?
So we will vote it out of committee of the whole, and then typically it just moves. It's like how we do the budget.
So Deb, correct me if I'm wrong, but this will be the same night as CA. That's what you're getting at, right? So next
Yes.
month on the night of CA.
There's a committee of the whole
Right, I
before the
understand
CA
that.
meeting.
Yep, okay.
And that,
Graham,
sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
Rob,
so that's the same night as a public hearing on the 5G legislation as well? Or,
that's what Joanne has indicated, yes.
okay, I just want to check.
So I'm wondering about having enough time for this. If it's just going to be an hour, including a public hearing?
No, I think the hour was the meeting. There's a public hearing, then there's a committee of the whole, and then we were gonna do CA right after the committee of the whole. We thought the committee of the whole would take an hour. I have no idea how long the public hearing's gonna be. That's like always a question mark. It could be 5 hours, which I hope it isn't, but, you know, we just have to see how many commenters attend, that's all. So that's why Steve and I will work on keeping CA either short, or if we can ask people if items can wait until the next month, you know, we'll just have to look at that.
So just a point of clarification, you mentioned that all 10 of us, but I believe, will we still be 9 at that point?
Apologies, I'm forgetting Steve is
Yeah,
no longer
okay.
with us. 9, that's correct.
Yeah.
My fault, I forgot about Steve's
I don't know if you
departure.
should describe it as he's no longer with us.
I mean,
but-
no longer on council. I'm in denial. Yes, 9. Committee of the Whole is now 9 until we fill that vacancy. Okay, anything else? George?
So while we're only 9, in any vote we take, it's still 6 votes is a majority?
Yes.
6 votes is a majority, and if there's a tie, then
So
Well, there
a
wouldn't
five-
be a tie with 9. There wouldn't be a tie with 9, so we'd never have a tie
You're right, 6 is a majority.
Only if
with 9.
But 5 votes wouldn't carry anything.
5 does not carry.
Yeah, assuming that all 9 of us are there, yes.
So 5 votes won't carry anything, and and this is just such a strange one because the mayor will consistently recuse himself from this. So
Oh.
even if there were 10 and
Oh,
there was a
true.
tie, he would recuse
Yeah, good
because
point.
of his relationship. So,
answer is exactly what you said, George, it's 6 votes carries.
yeah. Anything else? That's okay if you have questions, that's fine. So we can adjourn? Do you want to move to adjourn?
No, I want you to.
I'm not going to do it.
Let's vote on
Does anyone want to move to adjourn? Graham, seconded by Rob. All those in favor? And that carries 4-0. Okay, we'll see everybody in September. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
Recording stopped.